Toi Aotearoa, SOUNZ.
E ngā mana, e ngā reo, e raurangatira mā, tēnā koutou katoa. You're listening to He Reo Tawhito, a podcast for Sound Centre for New Zealand Music, Toi Aotearoa, ko Crystal Edwards ahau. It's been a great honour to speak with some of the leading experts on ngā Mōteatea in Aotearoa. Today, I'm talking with Paraone Gloyne.
Inei ahua ki te pō, uri tamai a pō ki te pō, tango whakarongo rā kōpū mai ki kauwhau. Tō ahunga ki toi ere tia tō, take ngai o tupu ai o, ariki he tātai no tu. Rere iho no whai o kore nui kore para kore whiwhia kore rawea i o take i o matangaro i o te wānanga nanga te ao wānanga te pōkarongo te ao kohani te wae.
Tēnā rā koutou e ngā kāwainui e ngā kāwairua. Ko hau tēnei ko te mokopuna tūrongo rāwa ko mahinārangi. Nō reira ko raukawa tēnei mihi atu nei, oti rā ko mania poto anō hoki tēnei e mihi atu nei. Kia koutou katoa, e mihi atu anau i te pīki auahi pīki taone o te awa mutu, kei kone ki au e noho ana. E tata ana ki aku papa kāhui, o takutaha ki a raukawa ki whare pūhunga. Engari i tupu kea hau i te arawa. Engari iau e tamariki ana he rite tonu tā māo ko taku whaia meki, mātou ko taku whānau, hoki mai ki o mātou papa kāhui o konei ki o mātou marae. Ka noho au ki aku kaumātua, ki taku kuia, ki reira rā ki reira rā whakarongo ai ki ngā kōrero tuku iho a rātou. Ana te nui ngā meki te katoa, kua ngaro. Ai, engari i te marae i tupu ai taku hia kai ngākau taku aroha ki te Wayata Tawhito, ki te Wayata Koroua, ara ki te Mōteatea.
Tēnā koe, tēnā rawa atu koe. Wā, ana, tāua tēnā mahinārangi ne. Utira, ko te kaupapa nei ana e māramana koe ko Mōteatea, ko te Mōteatea. Nā reira, ko te pātai tuatahi e hoa. Mena, ki te rongo mai koe ki tērā kupu Mōteatea, ne? When you hear that kupu Mōteatea, what does that mean to you? What's the first thing that pops into mind e hoa?
It's actually a person. So, te taina o taku whaia, the younger sister of my mother, Te Uru Whakarewa, Auntie Uru, or she was affectionately called, and she was the second eldest child of my kuia and koroua. So my mum's the eldest. Kare taku māma i whakatupu ki roto i te ao Māori. Engari taku karanga whaia, my auntie was. And really, she was a second mother to me, my mentor, e nānau i whakaako, e roto i te ao o te Mōteatea. So when I hear Mōteatea, I actually think of a person. Ka whakaro ki taku karanga whaia. And she not only taught me the kupu and the rangi to the Wayata from home, and she was trained herself by kaumātua. You know, when she got to an age where my grandfather thought she should learn Mōteatea, he used to send a taxi for her because she couldn't drive. And she would tell the taxi to go because she didn't want to learn those flat songs. Koina tana kōrero. Ki hai ia i mōhio i tērā wā that actually it was a pūmanau of hers. And call me biased, but my auntie, she just, she would sing a Mōteatea and she could bring a person to tears, whether they knew the reo or not, just through the wairua of how she sung the Wayata. Nō reira, koira taku mōhio ki te Mōteatea, I grew up feeling it, before I learnt the kupu to the Wayata, and I spent a lot of time with my old people. I au I te marae, I was a Pākiki, ana ko te Pākiki inquisitive, ne? Koira te Pākiki, to the point of turning the person mad that that little child or mokopuna is asking pātai. I could never ask enough pātai. I au e whenā tonu au I tēnei wā. He rite tonu aku pātai, he hai pēnea, hei pēra ai. That's how I was growing up. But my auntie nurtured me. She saw that within me. And ahua kōrero kumara enei engari, you know, Whare Huia talked about tētahi o ana kōrero, ki te inu koe I te wai, me mahara ki te puna. Where's that effect? So if you drink from the water, remember the source. And really, I need to acknowledge the source. Aha koe mihi ana ki au anō, but my auntie really was a huge part of me today. Along with many, many other pauako I roto I taku ao, if I was to name some, but really it started with my auntie and with my kaumātua. So koina, when I hear that word, I think of her first and foremost, and then I think of all the other cool stuff.
That's really neat. Ko koe te tuatahi of the first actually to say that when you hear that kupu, it takes you to a tangata ki tētahi wahine, and he pau tēnei wahine. Nā rere, ka mihi atu ki tērā pau. And I love the flat songs. Orite ki tā Wayne. Ka ki mai a Wayne, ai, he flat
Wangata.
songs. Ai.
Well, even if you listen to, you know, I listen to a lot of, I've got recordings of my old people, and then, you know, he pai ki au, you know, a lot of people go on YouTube, Netflix. My YouTube and Netflix is Ngā Taonga and Auckland Sound Archives. I spend a lot of time listening to them. And it's really interesting, you know, ki te whakarongo koe ki te āhua o tā tātou Wayata, I te Wayata Mōteatea Koraua, Tawhito rānei, whatever you want to call it. You know, I think, and I've commented on this before, I would say that competition, whakataitai, has influenced how we perform Mōteatea. Ki te whakarongo koe ki nā rekoatatanga o mua, hika, rereke noake, ka mutu, you would hear they'd all be singing the same rangi, but that every individual person would be sort of doing their own thing as well, you know. So tērā. Yeah, and, you know, te wairua Māori, just again to touch on sort of how my auntie would teach me, e ne pai tēnei mā te hunga whakarongo mai ana. A particular occasion was a uhunga tangihanga, and I te Wayata tangi mātou, and I would have been a teenager. And, you know, I was singing across the marae to the, I think, ahe manuhiri mātou, and I was singing to the tangata whenua, nā rātou nei mātou I whakatau ki runga I te marae, ki te tangi, I te tūpāpaku, and I te Wayatau ki a rātou. And ever so gently, I felt my auntie, her hands on my hips, ne? And she turned me. She didn't say anything, she just turned to me to sing to the tūpāpaku. Ne? Nā, taku kite, I nā marae, te nui ngō te wā, that's what happens at a tangi. People get up and they're singing to each other, e tama, kei ko nā ke koe ki te uhunga rā, ki te tangi I te tūpāpaku. Nō reira, I think those are some of, I continually use the phrase little big things, I roto I te ao Māori. Ana koe nā tētahi o nā tikanga ki au. There's the knowing the songs, there's the knowing the rangi, the kupu, all of that, but there's also the tikanga that is wrapped up and encapsulates our performance of Wayata Mōteatea and Wayata Koraua. And just in short too, Mōteatea now has become probably an umbrella term for Wayata Tawhito, whereas Iaku Rangahau Mōteatea were traditionally laments. Ne, engari now when we use that word, we use it as an umbrella term a lot of the time to mean Wayata Koraua, Wayata Tawhito. Ahoi anō.
Ana, tēnā koe I era whakamahuki e hoa. Ai, tika hoki, ka tautoko hoki au I a koe, he waimaria nōku I whakatiputaku koe ai au hoki I te marae. And yeah, I used to find it funny, you know, te tiro atu ki wetahi o ngā tāngata. Like, why are they singing to us? Ara te kaupapa. But tika hoi, tika tai. Do you have any personal faves? You know, you've been going through those archives there and you've got a bit of a plethora there behind you there, I can see, with all that puka behind you. Nā reira, he tino waiata tāu.
It depends. You know, I put a post up a few months ago, and e whakatumatuma I etahi, because it was directed to my gender, ki ngā tāne, kia kaua mātou te tāne e māngere ki te ako I ngā waiata. And it was based on what I was learning through listening to these recordings, and what I remembered, that koraua, kāre rātou I mōhio rātou ki ngā waiata. And a lot of the koraua would start their own waiata. And they knew the waiata. And I've always, you know, I've been taught to be a good orator, pū kōrero, me mōhio hoki koe ki ngā waiata. I te mea kei reira no ngā kōrero, haunga te waiata hei tautoko I tō kōrero, engari kei reira no etahi mātauranga, e whai kiko ai o kōrero, ana kei reira tētahi pātaka, kei reira rā etahi kōrero, hei tiki ake māu ki te whakatōki roto I o kōrero, all that sort of stuff. Anyway, I put a post up saying, oh, you know, tāne mā, you should know at least 20. And ka tū ngā pihi wete, I got messages and one saying, oh, you know, we're lucky that we know 5. Now, it wasn't about that. What I was really doing was, you know, I te tautau au, I te hunga, I a tātou te ao Māori, don't be complacent. You know, don't be complacent with the amount of waiata. I had someone respond saying, oh, well, we got told we only need to know 5 if we, you know, we're paeke. We only need to know these. And I'm like, well, what if, you know, you go out? I don't think, you know, me noho era hei takunga. But it's a talent, you know, learning waiata and retaining them. I did a tally by myself, without any, so, you know, and koutou e whakarongo mai ana, this is a good exercise for you to do. Probably write down all the Wayata tawhito, which include pōkeka, manawa wera, e ngiri. Ne? Harikai, now the old ones. I'm not talking about new ones. I'm talking about the old ngā meo mua. Write them all down and count up how many can you perform by yourself in confidence without looking at any kupu. Ne? And then make another list of how many you can perform, but you need to be with a group. So, e mohio pai ana, e autaia tonu tō mohio, but you need to sing them in a group. And see how many you've got. Ne? Because, you know, going on Mervyn McLean and all those ones, I think Kino Hughes, I think he listed over 1,000 that Kino could sing by himself. Now, I'm just over 100. E taia nei au te waiata me taku kotahi. If I was to add on the waiata that I could sing in the group, might be over 150. But again, that's nothing compared to what our tupuna knew. Engari, don't beat ourselves up, but rather use that as inspiration that we can revive that way of knowing and that recall. Engari, we need to practice. And the thing is we don't have enough opportunities to, because when we practice them is for either tangihanga, kaupapa Māori, pōwhiri, and whakataitai. So you really need to put the work in at home. Ne, e maharati ai ngā waiata nei. So, coming back to your pātai, because I have this, you know, in humility, command or knowledge of waiata, it's very hard for me to land on favourites. Ne? You know, I can say, well, these are my favourites, because let alone my own iwi, or I roto I a tainui, you know, e mohi ana ki etahi o ngā waiata a Tūhoe. E mohi ana ki etahi o ngā waiata a Aotearoa. Those are the two iwi I grew up in that aren't my own iwi, even though I have some whakapapa there. Ne? And, you know, so I can say, oh, you know, I roto ia tūhoi te rongo te tuna, engari te titi. You know, they stir their emotions. I roto ia te arawa, ara ko te kai ora tamaku. Aha kora, te rā te uahi. There's many. I wouldn't be able to pick out one, and it all depends on the mood, ne? But again, you know, people if you look at Wayata, how tūpuna did, I've got one of my kuia, I roto I tana puka puka. She had all the Wayata from here. So she had the Raukawa ones, and then she'd extend with the Tainui ones, and then she had all the ones no ngā iwi maha. Now, if you look at it, our tūpuna, he rite rātou ki a tātou o Naya nei, when a new release comes out, you know, we jump on Spotify, is it out yet? Or Apple iTunes to download it. That's how Wayata was. He tangata rātou. And that's how Wayata sort of travelled around I roto I te ao Māori, o tērā wā. It was a way of communication. You know, we need to look at the practical side of it, but it was a way of life. Nō reira, nā ko nā I ora tonu ai nā Wayata I roto I a rātou. So those are one of the things that I like to sort of highlight kia tātou o nāianei, kia kaua tātou e ware. Yes, there's the wairua of te Wayata, te mana me te tapu and all of that. But the other thing was the practical side of Mōteatea, of Wayata koro, was a means of communicating one's emotions and feelings, thoughts. You know, and, you know, you could sing a Wayata up north, and, you know, if the message was good, and again, tarangi, it would make its way all the way down through the motu. Ne? Nā koira etahi o nā hua, nā painga o te Mōteatea, o te Wayata korua rānei. So yeah, for me to put my finger on one, you know, we're launching an oriori. Nā kui tito. And, you know, we've re-indigenized our thinking about oriori. And kia tātou katoa e whakarongo mai nei, me mutu tātou kōrero that oriori is a lullaby. We're downselling, we're undermining te mana o ngā waiatara, if we just call it a lullaby. E harai te lullaby noiho. Kao, oriori are more than waiata whakamoi pepi. You know, te tirohia pine te kura, tirohia te oriori o tūtere moana, pōpō, you know, it's a marautanga. He marautanga te oriori. So I've drawn inspiration from many waiata from across iwi, and in our forming our educational framework, I roto I a raukawa, te manawa pouhihiri, we came up with the idea, myself and others, for me to compose an oriori. Tahi anō ka mutu, taku tito I te oriori nei. I also drew inspiration from the kumuli pō, ko te kumuli pō, he waiata tērā nā kuini lilu o Kalani, or Hawaii, and it sings the creation of the Hawaiian people and their environment, their natural environment, and them as a people, and o rātou whakapapa ki te taiao. So I drew some inspiration from there as well. And I thought, what would an oriori look like if I sung myself into creation for Raukawa? So koina te mea I ara taki au ki te tito I te oriori, ka whakarewa tia a pōpō. And te mutunga iho, it's about 27 minutes long, te roa o te oriori. And how I composed it was, every verse is an epoch in our history as Raukawa, and kua whakahāngaitia ki ngā tau o te tamaiti, te tamahine rānei. So for instance, the first verse is about our divine origins. So our creation story within Raukawa, within Tainui, and that verse is sung by the parents and the whānau no te pōtiki I roto I te kōpū o tōna whaia. The second verse, ka kōrero tia ngā mātua o tāwhaki, me tā rāua mahi ki te whakawhānau I a tāwhaki, and talks about the role of the male in helping and aiding his wife to birth their child, which is something kua ngaro i roto i te ao Māori, and goes with some of our wānanga we've been having about how our traditional birthing practices. So the second verse coincides with the birth of the child and the first year of the child. And each verse goes on. Ne? So we've got a verse. So the parents learn the verse, they sing the verse, no te mama e hapu ana. When baby is born, they've learned the second one, and they sing the second verse at the birth. And then when baby's 2 years age, they've learned the third verse, and so forth, all the way up until the child is 11 or 12. And all the ngā kōrero, harai ngā kōrero uaua, meki ngā kōrero riri, I whakaaro ake au, well, it's life, and part of our history were our battles. So, you know, while it retraces our creation story, I'm not going to say myths, I'm going to say our narratives. Again, I think that word, saying creation myth, undermines te mana o ngā kōrero tuku iho ao tātou tūpuna. Pai noi ho tērā taha te hekenga mai o tainui, ngā whakapapa, our relationship with Ngāti Kahungunu is all in there, mahinarangi, poraurangi, kahungunu, ruapani, mātātua. And then also the battles. Ne? Now, kāre pai, ko taku puku I mea ki au, kāre pai kia whakaurua e rā kōrero, when you know, he's still, he or she is still very young. So I put that verse in when they're a bit older, you know. So each sort of verse, and it gets longer. So the verses sort of start off short, they get a bit longer, as well as the child is getting older. So koina tētahi āhuatanga. I wanted to touch on about that I drew inspiration from many of the oriori through the motu. Even though we've got 2-3 known oriori with I roto i a tainui, we don't sing them. Ne? Ana ka noho ko te oriori, hei huarahi whakaako I te tamaiti. Ne? Me ngā mātua, me te whānau, not just the tamaiti. Ne? Nō reira, koira ki au tētahi o ngā āheinga hou. For me, it's finding, recreating, I guess, spaces for Wayata, Tawhito, Mōteatea to live a new life into rei and not have to wait for matatini or regionals or tangihanga. Ne, why? Tēnā, titongia ngā Wayata, kimihia he huarahi hou e ora mai ai e rā taonga tiku iho. Kei maumau noi ho. Nō reira, koira tētahi kōrero.
Oh, tēnā koe I tērā kōrero. There's so many elements in that kōrero that you gave. I'll just take you back ki te timatatanga when you were saying I te wai e timatai koe ki te tito I tō oriori nā. And then how you mentioned that you were drawing inspiration. Engari, ka tarapeke atu koe ki tērā mautere o Hawaii. I was like, that's a bit of a Tommy Taurima number. Ka, mau te wehi. But ka kei te kite au I tō, you know, what you're trying to do. Ne ai whātoro atu ki era o ngā wāhi. So, kāre koe noho ki tō ao anake kei te, you know, tūperatia ne, you know. So fabulous, you know, mas mihi ki a koe I tērā. Me te haere tonu, like how you, because I have to reflect again with Papa Wayne, again Wayne Ngata. Koe nā hoki tāna mo te oriori. You know, ori te tonu ki a koe, ori te tonu ki a koe. Kore rā tāna mahi ki uaupa ana ka tito wetahi oriori mō nā tamāhine mera o nā whānau. Hei aha ana, hei whāngai atu ki te tamaiti, ki te māma, ki te pāpā, ana ki te whānau hoki. So to see that, kei te mahi pērā hoki koe, but you've just taken it up a whole nother level e te hoa and sort of done it on a kind of a life journey so that it becomes a lifestyle part of the whānau. Anō nei te pai e wa. That's just next level. Tēnā koe I tērā. So I hope that comes to definite fruition and that it catches on. It catches on like how you said, to haina atu ki te ao katoa I tēnei āhuatanga kia hoki mai tēnei mahi tahito a tātou. So ngā mihi nui. And actually, that's where I was kind of leading. We were going to lead with our next pātai. Nai wano I homai wetahi Wayata, o e wetahi Mōteatea. Nai wano I tito, atu I tēnei oriori ne. So you've also composed a few other Wayata. And ko te pātai ke, how else have you used Mōteatea, Wayata Tahito, Wayata Korau Rānei. In your music specifically, has it always been the same kind of composition that you go with, or do you always change it up each time you compose a Mōteatea or a Wayata?
Yeah, pātai pai tēnā. E tehi Wayata, e mohi ana nā kaitito. He pūmanawa te kaitito, te tito. Sometimes, ka haere mai te rangi me ngā kupu. Uncle Bob, Ngāpo, he always talked about inspiration, the 3 levels. When you're in the wairua, inspiration, it just comes. And then there's no tāna. When you're trying too hard, it's perspiration. And e tama, me kāre mahitahi te wairua me te hinengaro, it's desperation. And kamihi au kia rāua. Those are some of the people I was very lucky to spend time with and be mentored by I roto I taku ao. E mihi anau kia ngāpō, kia pīmia I te mea, nā rāua I whakapono mai ki au ki te tito Wayata mā te wakahuia. Rua te kau aku tau, ka tito au I te pātere mā te wakahuia, nā rātau I Wayata ki te matatini I Takaparawa 2002. I was honoured to do their pātere because they never had a Wayata that belonged to them. Wakahuia had always done Wayata from the coast. E pāto reo, going back to the kaore te pōnei, te kōti, taku kuri and speaking of Wayne, te tangi arangi uia, e hika e hoki koe, which is a Wayata that has inspired me. And it was through their son tāpeta, taku hoa. Ana I just think everything happens for a reason. But the template I followed in that instance was Uncle Bob and I had a haru. I say that in humility. And I challenged myself to create something that the kaifakawa would think was old. Ne? Ka pai? So I don't want to leave any clues in there that it was a new composition. And when it was submitted in the words, I can talk about this now, I te mea. It's been 20 years since. And Uncle Bob was I aia whakaputa ana I oku whakaaro ki au. He did ask me though because he knew that by doing that, if we were to use that strategy, that I wouldn't put my name on it till afterwards, which is what happened. Now, it wasn't until after that people knew that it was a new composition, and people actually asked where he found it. ne? Nā, e kōrero ana I roto I te whakaiti, but that was the whole strategy, ne? So, that was different. He rereke tērā, and then after then, well, I was lucky, fortunate and humbled to compose for them another for the next few matatini until 2009. Ka mutu taku tito. Engari, kei reira tonu te whanaungatanga. Ahakoa, he kapa ke tōku, even though we're having a bit of a break. Kei reira tonu tērā aroha ki te wakahuia. So every Mōteatea has been, you know, that was a different strategy. I composed I te matenga o Rāwiri rangi tauira I haere mātou ki tana uhunga, ki tana tangihanga I te arawa. And there was myself, and I went with Papa Wharehuia, kua ngaro nei, and Papa Pou, o tā Pou te mara. And it was us three that I whakaeke mātou ki te mara, and they said, oh boy, mai te whai kōrero. And I was just filled with aroha for Rāwiri. And kareu I rongo, but I muri te tangi, I muri tonu mai te tangihanga, I haere noa mai ngā kupu, ki au. Ka puta he Wayata tangi, kia Rāwiri. So that's you know, the kupu and the rangi, and the interesting thing is that Wayata, when his whānau, I put it up as, I put it out there, and the whānau asked if they could include it in a book that's just been published, of a collection of Ngāti Whakaue songs. And I thought, goodness me, you know, hey, we he nui ngā Mōteatea Ngāti Whakaue, but they wanted to put that Wayata in there because Rāwiri actually started the book. And his whānau, his children and his wife finished the book off ne, because kāri tutuki aia I ngaro ke. But Wayata made it in there. So ko tērā Mōteatea Wayata tangira I haere mai I runga I te aroha. I puta no mai I runga I te wairua Māori. Kāre hau I whakaaro ake, I want to write a song about Rāwiri. It just came out. Ne, ana e whērā te Wayata I ona wā. And then there's other Wayata that I've put, old Wayata that haven't had rangi to them that I've put the rangi to, which I encourage iwi to do. I won't say who, but I've done that for my own iwi, and I've also done that for other iwi. They've asked me to put rangi to their Wayata koraua, to their Mōteatea. And, you know, when I first had this, it was actually one of my kaumātua who encouraged me to do so, because they said, boy, ki te kore koe e whērā, ka takoto puehu noiho nā kupu ki ro puka puka. Ana tāpiritia he rangi e ora mai ai te Wayatara. Ka tai kārua, by putting a rangi to a Wayata, if you go out and sing it, there may be a time where someone hears it and says, hey, I know that, but this is our rangi. Ne? Now, you would have never, ever sung that Wayata if you didn't put a rangi to it, right? Ne? Now, going back to taku mohio I pēra te tangi o te rangi uia. They had the tune, the rangi, well, I don't say tune, I like to use the word melody. So they had the rangi for some verses of that Wayata, and he roa tērā tangi. Engari, kāri mohio ki te rangi ki etahi atu, but they took the template from the verses they knew and applied the rangi. Now, that template that we talk about, he anga wairua tērā. You need to give yourself fully over to a Wayata Mōteatea that hasn't got a rangi you know of. You need to give yourself over to it. And it will guide you, and it will tell you the voice that needs to be heard. It will come from within the Wayata. Ne? So that's another, tētai atu tirohanga ki te Mōteatea, and ko tāku kia koutou o ngaiwi, if you have any Wayata, have a hui, a wānanga as a hapu, but give it over to the people that have that pūmanawa, that natural talent to put the rangi to the Wayata. Ne, ki ngā Mōteatea. He pai noa ke tērā, then leaving it in a book, in a manuscript somewhere, kāre rangona, kāre whitikina e tērā. And if there is a rangi to it, as I said, if you sing the rangi and someone says, oh, this is the rangi, well, look, you would have never ever sung that Wayata. So it's a win-win. You know, e mā wai koe e whakahe. Mā wai koe, ko tātou te whakatinanatanga o tātou tūpuna. So we have that, we're reawakening that tūpuna memory within us when we give rangi to these waiata that have been sitting dormant I roto I ngā puka puka. Ko tētahi waiata e hihia nei te kōrero was, and again, this actually came, this wasn't meant to be something that my group, Mōteatea, would sing, perform, I should say, at te matatini. Engari haere no mai ngā kupu. And it was to do with something somebody said about the kingitanga. And, you know, classically, traditionally, pātere were replies or rebuttals, you know, and mostly performed by women. And, you know, I've done some little bit of research on the iwi that have the most pātere. Ne? And traditionally, if you look in the Mōteatea books, you'll find that the majority of pātere come from Ngāti Tūwharetoa, Ngāti Maniapoto, Ngāti Raukawa, and Te Arawa. Ka pai? Traditionally, I think it grew from there. And te nuinga o ngā kaitito, te katoa rānei, were women. Ka pai. But now see, we've repurposed that word pātere. While pātere follow the rhythm of traditional pātere, they're not actually composed on the same circumstances as what pātere were traditionally composed for. Ne, they were rebuttals, he whakautu taunu. Now, pātere, we can have a pātere, hurihari te whenua, even the word karapipiti, I think is used as a word to talk about a pātere that goes around naming, you know, different tupuna and geographical aspects. But that word karapipiti comes from a pātere called karapipiti. Ne, so we've also borrowed that and made our own definition up. So isn't it wonderful? So, you know, we definitely have, we are thinking about Mōteatea or Wayata Tawhito in new spaces. So back to this particular composition, Te Tekau Mārua or the 12. Te Tekau Mārua traditionally were 12 advisors that King Tāwhiao set up in his time. And then over time, the other kingi or monarchs, up until, I think, to King Koroki's time, I think it stopped after him. Te Atairangi Kāhu didn't have a Te Tekau Mārua. And they were made up of advisors from across, traditionally from within Tainui, and then extended. Ne? Now, Kingi Tūheitia had his 12, and he re-erected the Tekau Mārua. And that was the title of my pātere. And I used the Tekau Mārua, the 12 representatives, as a tāhu for my pātere to rebut what was said about the kingitanga. Ne? Because before this, all the pātere the traditional ones, you know, like poi atu taku poi, and there's many, you name various rangatira, you go around the motu or whatever. But we weren't singing about any rangatira that are alive. Ne? And koinei te rerenga kētanga o te Tekau Mārua I tērā wā. You know, and if I could just sing a bit of it. E noho ana I te roro, te mana motu hake, ka hara mai te whakaaro ki ahau, ka te tiro, ka whakarongo ki waho ki te kupu, I te ngutu o te motu, e pātai ane I te pōtai o te kotahitanga, e kara e rima henare I te kōtiu purupuru a ngā kōwhaorau, kei ta poko te haere a te uri o rāhiri, I ngā whakatara te arero tangatanga e parare mai rā, hei aha koa. Nau mai kōrero tia ki te mārai tū ake hō he paki waimiri rangi re whanui o na tuke mata ki te tautoko mai ka pai. Kātahi nei ka hae papa, kātahi nei ka ora mai taku ngā kau ki te piki preina re reki maua. E koro mai tauranga e kihi ngā tai. Mō rehu hau a tau tainau ki te kei o te poti mihini. Panai au e awanui ki te tai whakanukunuku hia, ki te tai whakaneke hia. Huri rere tia i te moana toi kei matata te unga mō huku ki te nohoanga o pauroto mā. Na hau hei tuku ki koko hinau ko pairama. E koro he mana hea mana tia, tō puniranga tia, pato hia, ki a mānu paora i te kauni he rā. Me whakatata mai ki tō taha nōwhea hoki e matara, tu tō ta māhine perehitini, a katara ina tokona te ora, tokona te wāhine, tokona mai hoki e ni hari manahi. Te kauwhau ki pūtau a ki tēnei tana mānawa te āmine ake nei kāpai. And it goes on. Ne? And that was my hook, ne? That's one of my styles. And koutou ngā kaitito, I'm not going to say pinch because kare te Māori pera, we borrow. Te kōti borrowed, ne? Te kōti borrowed, but it's something that our tūpuna did. So, but I call that, you know, in music, you have a hook. Usually it's the chorus or a melody or whatever. My hook in this pātere was ka tau, ka pai or ka pai at the end of each verse. And there's many layers to why I said ka pai. Ne, one was to calm myself down and not get angry. Ne? But also the ka pai is also at the end of each line in the longer version of the pai, the karakia pai Māori there. Anyway, in those two verses, you know, I mentioned Eri Mahenare, he was alive then. We've got Kihi Ngātai, just recently passed away. Morehu, passed away a couple of years ago. Wayata is the only surviving one of the three wise men, I call, of Tauranga Moana. We talk about going on a boat. You know, our tupuna talked about a waka. Well, I go on a boat, a jet boat. Hey, and then I talk about hopping on the airplane. You know, we go on the airplane these days, check and go in. If you're lucky, you've got a koru membership. And Awanui Black sends me off to Pauroto down in Mōteatea. Him and Pauroto are friends. So these are people that were associated with the kingitanga, not necessarily to te kaumārua. Eri Mahenare was. Hapai. And I'm going around the motu in this journey, naming rangatira who had an association with the kingitanga, who supported the kingitanga, who I saw as faces o ngā iwi o te motu, who came to Koroneihana, who came to the hui, along with the te kaumārua and also the kāhui wairua. Now, in all humility, other than haka, usually roto i te haka, kei te whakahe tētai, go back to Tiriti o Waitangi Wakahuia 1986, you know, that's still one of the greatest haka taparahi. But Meuaua, you'd hear a whole lot of rangatira in one song like this being acknowledged. Te whāna apanui do their waiataringa I te papaioia, tami here, you know, tērā waiata. Engari te pātere nei karekau. So I thought, wow, this is so an old template that our tūpuna used and followed. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to modernize it. And whakahuahuatia ngā rangatira o tēnei wā. Now, of course, some of our rangatira got hurt feelings because they weren't mentioned. But then afterwards, I knew what was going to happen. Now, you know, there's only a few that are still alive since we performed this pātere. It's only been 7 years, you know. Engari he koira te Wayata. Ne? So I wanted to sort of pick up on this composition because I think it was very new, but it was also very old. I followed the tūpuna template, and I reinvigorated, I believe, pātere and gave it a breath of life and made it current.
E tika ana koe, me mihi ka tika ki a koe, because just in our previous uiui with Pere, he actually mentions that exact waiata as we were talking about, if we were to go into a new direction of Mōteatea, you know, how would you see it? Well, first off, he plucked that one right there. He goes, waka hoki aku mahara ki mō tai tangata rai, ana ki te rao nā pātere, nā paraone tito, ana hāngai ana ki te kiingitanga, and he just exactly, well, not with all the lovely little extras that you've added to it, but how he used that specific that specific pātere as something moving forward with a new way, but still e pupuri tonu ki nā ahuatanga tawhito nei o te tito waiata nei. So thank you for just giving that elaboration around that waiata, me e rā atu o nā waiata kua titoa e koe. And I must say to korua tahi ko, because I personally love kingi as well. I think you two, korua tahi, you know, you two are the te tahi taumata, e whakātu mai ana, ara. Look, we are singing about current things that relate to us today, you know, like pai te hitori, pai te pūrākau, pai e rā mea katoa. But if we don't start making things that are relevant to our generation today, wow, kaha tātou, how do we narrate these kōrero, how will we transcribe these kōreros and these histories that maybe just will pass us, and like you said, e whitu tau kua hipa, and ara o e rao nā rangatira kua hinga i mua i tērā o ngā waiata. So tēnā koe i wera whakamahuki e oha mo tērā pātere au. But as we're talking around that too, especially around how you and other composers are tōna raweke nei pia i nā waiata tawhito nei. Do you feel that Mōteatea compositions and performances are facing any issues?
I think an issue is, you know, I think it's always, and one of the issues is going back to my auntie who thought they were flat, you know, is other than whakataitai, is there a place for our waiata tawhito to live and thrive? Ne? I think it's finding platforms for them, you know, in this digital age, in this age of social media. So, you know, going back to the waiata I composed for Rawiri, I thought, well, I don't know when I'm going to sing this. I'm going to put it on social media. So I did, you know. So is there a space for our waiata tawhito and waiata tawhito hou? Or Mōteatea hou to live? I think it's finding other places and spaces for our waiata tawhito to live, and not only live, to thrive. Ne? And again, that's why the thinking that sort of drove me into composing the oriori. Te oriori o raukawa, to find a space for where it's going to thrive, where it's going to be learned, where it's going to be current, where it's going to be used, and for us to continue challenging ourselves to find spaces for our enei momo titonga, ne? Kia kaue noho mai ko te whakataitai anahe, hei wāhi e rangonai, e waiata ti ai, e nei taonga nā o tātou tūpuna. And to still, you know, value the traditional compositions, but also to, you know, whakapono ki a tātou, he kairoto hoki a tātou te tohungatanga ki te tito, I etahi Mōteatea hou, e hange ana ki te wānei. Nore, I think those are some of the challenges. I wouldn't call them difficulties, but I think it's better to call them a challenge. And probably too is, you know, to keep our rangatahi engaged with them. You know, that's for lots of things, not just Mōteatea. I you know, I spoke at the Kupu Festival a couple of months ago I Taura. Te miharo o tērā kaupapa. Ana I haere ki te kura kaupapa o Hurunga Terangi. And I said, and this was my kōrero, was about Mōteatea. And I thought I was going to get the seniors. And they said, no, you got the whole school saying, pipi papa. I'm like, how am I going to keep these babies engaged? you know. But I rawe ki a rātou. I think I'm pretty good at catering to or tailoring my kōrero to the audience. But I was given, my heart was filled with joy because I kite au I etahi o ngā tamariki o ngā rangatahira, they weren't just listening. And I saw within them that spark that I still feel inside of me and I once felt when I was a boy, listening to my auntie and my kaumātua, and I felt good about the future and the survival. Not just the survival, but as I said, for it to thrive, I roto I te apōpō. And, we just got to be okay with the fact that not everybody's into Wayata koraua. It's like me. I'm not really into corals. Mōtai has never, we did a coral once, so we would get time, but even then it wasn't a coral, it was a karakia, and I got a bit of a slap on the hand from some about that, because I was pushing the boundaries as I do. Not everybody is into Wayata Tawhito, and e pai ana tēnā, he pēnā no te karanga. Not every wahine is into karanga, not every man is into whai kōrero. Those of us that are I roto i te ao Māori, some love wakaama, some into tā moko, e pai ana tēnā. So, but it's finding the spaces for these taonga to have pertinence, for us to perpetuate the art and promulgate the art, so the art thrives and lives.
I think you've pinpointed right there, because a lot of our interviewees have been talking around growth, te whanaketanga pe o te Mōteatea, te Wayata Tawhito, but that kupu thrive, pai ake rawa te rā kupu, to see it thrive in the apōpō, āna, katoatea au te rao nā kōrero. You have lightly, in, like throughout our kōrero, sort of indicated a bit of a new direction for Mōteatea. But if we were to look at it as a specific genre of music, do you think it has a apōpō in it, e te hoa?
I'll tell you what, I'm going back to the oriori. And it's best, our lived experiences, the best talking points. Now, I did touch on, and this is as a research, I'm talking from a point of research now, because I think this is e hangai ana tēnei ki tō kōrero, about genre and te mana o te waiata. The power, I guess, and there's still kurahuna in these waiata and how we sing them. So an example is, the verse I talked about, there's a verse in the oriori, e kei reira ngā kōrero pakanga. And I had completed the rangi for the oriori, and when we went into studio to record it, we couldn't help but sing that particular verse. It kept coming out like a pātere. We couldn't help ourselves, because of the content of that particular verse. We recorded it quite a few times. Kātahi au ka whakarongo. And going back to this, I've talked about this, kei te moia koe ki te oriori pōpō. Pōpō e tangi ana tama ki te kaimana. Now, pōpō also means this, what I'm doing. Koe nā ke te takenga mai o te kupu, pōpō. Pōpō is when you soothe. To actually pet anything is called pōpō. So when you pet a baby like that, ko te pōpō tērā. And another word for yawn is hāmama pōpōia. So petting your hāmama. Ne? Koia. So I went, wait on, and I listened to the rhythm, and I imagined petting a baby, and I thought, he ana te mana wataki, the rhythm was wrong. Then I looked at the amount of syllables in the previous verses to my pōpō action. Ne? And I thought, I've got too many, there's too many syllables, not kupu, but the syllables I was pairing with the rangi of the oriori was out of whack, wasn't with my pōpō. So if you lined up all of, if you lined up a collection of Wayata, say Wayata Tangi and Apakura, ne, and the phonics and the sonics of the Wayata, along with the meter, kei reira anō etahi kurahuna. Ne? So, you know, when you're talking about genre, he wairua tō te Mōteatea. Ne? And that was all part of the, and that, so, you know, in humility, I think our tupuna were teaching me a lesson in that moment when I was actually composing on the go. I went back and rewrote that verse while we were recording and redid the rangi, ne, because we couldn't help singing it like a pātere, ne, and that was a big learning moment for me, I roto e tērā, and then it opened my eyes and I thought, kei konei tonu etahi kurahuna. So there's so many kurahuna I roto I ngā Wayata Tawhito, I ngā Mōteatea, hei ako mā tātou. Kāre anō te katoa kia whākina mai, kia tātou. And I think when we're talking about manawataki, rhythm, rangi, oro, all those sorts of things, yes, ki au, he momo anō te Wayata Tawhito, te Wayata Korua, te Mōteatea rānei. I think I went off on a bit of I won't call it a tangent, tētahi atu huarahi, engari, I a tāua e wānanga ana I te whānuitanga o te Mōteatea. I think these are some of the things that there needs to be more rangahau put into, other than just te tikanga o ngā kupu and those sorts of things. I think we need to put some more rangahau into the rangi and the manawataki.
Oh, I totally understand where you're going with this, because it's not like how we can go, oh no, that's a pop song and that's an R&B song. Like it's got a specific kind of taki for that, and then you can just sort of like categorize it immediately, Like you said, he nui ngā āhuatanga o te Wayata, o te Mōteatea, te Wayata Tawhito e raka mea katoa. So yes, no, ka tautoko a hau I tērā. And yes, it would take a little bit more rangahau kia puta mai e rā whakaaro wau, kei te aha e nei Wayata, What are we going to do with these Wayata? Ai. Tēnā koe. Well, e te hua, ko tata pau te wā kia tāua nei. O tira, hei whakatepe I tēnei kōrero. As a composer and as a performer as well, have you got any future plans, besides, of course, your most recent one that's about to launch our pōpō, for involving Mōteatea?
Probably for me, he rawe tēnā pātai, and e whakaaro anau he pewhia taku mori I ngā kaitito o a pōpō, ngā kaitito Mōteatea. And koera tētahi me tino tākirikiri taku ngākau I au ka haere ki te kura kaupapara. So I'm thinking in the space of how I can nurture tomorrow's kaitito o ngā Mōteatea. You know, when Paraone Gloyne finally leaves this world physically, which is a long time, e te iwi. I want to go knowing that I've done my bit to nurture tomorrow's composers of future Wayata Tawhito, Wayata Korua, Wayata Mōteatea. Ki au, koina tētahi wāhanga nui ki au I nāia nei. Ai, nō reira, ka waiho I konei, and I do hope koutou te hunga e whakarongo mai ana, that I've shared at least one thing to inspire you to either learn more than one Mōteatea, to extend on your Mōteatea pātaka Wayata, or to inspire you to have a go at composing a Mōteatea. It doesn't have to be long, or to sit and listen. You know, to listen to the recordings. I hope I shared something with some that inspired you to contribute to the longevity and life, so our Wayata thrive in their Wayata. Nō reira, e mihi ake ana kia koutou e te iwi o tira, Christo, tēnā koe, e arataki nei a tāua kōrero, tā tāua wānanga I pai katoa ki au, tā tāua noho tahi. Nice change, being the one in the podcast, not the one running it, for taringa, and I really have enjoyed a tāua kōrero. Nō reira, aku mihi kia koe o tira kia koutou te hunga whakahaere, Kia noho mai rā koutou i raro i ngā manaakitanga a ngā mātua tūpuna me te manātua. Pai mārire.
Hikitia e tua wahine mahapai ngā e tua hangata ngā wai hotanga iho hei oranga mōu mō ana matara no kātu ki te ao e taku matua wahine e taku matua tāne no hoki ka noho hei tupuna mo ngā mangai ngā o muri atu nei Mātua rauti a ngā pūkei kura e kia ai he moe pori mātua ko te reo me ngā tikanga mātua ko te whenua mātua ko te wai mātua ko te iwi mātua ko te whakaro nui mātua ko te aroha Māori mātua ko te whakaiti e hine tama purutia kia mautawhia kia ora. Kei heke tō tupu, kei onge ka meha, e onge aku e.
He Reo Tawhito, a podcast from SOUNZ Centre for New Zealand Music, Toi Aotearoa, presented by me, Crystal Edwards, with today's guest, Paraone Gloyne. The Wayata in today's podcast were E Onga Aku E, performed by Paraone Gloyne and Ngā Hui Kopa, released in 2022, thanks to Paraone Gloyne and Te Manawa Pauhihiri. Te Hau ki Tāmaki, performed by Te Wakahuia Te Matatini 2002, thanks to Paraone Gloyne and Māori Television. And Te Tekau Mārua, performed by Mōtai Tangata Rau Te Matatini 2015, thanks to Paraone Gloyne and Māori Television. Thanks to series producers Tony Huata and Roger Smith. Sound engineer Phil Brownlee. Research by Te Ahukaramu Charles Royal. Production assistance from Jonathan Ingle and Ngā Huia Maniapoto. Marketing, Leonay Fenta, and executive producer Diana Marsh. Thanks to Adrian Tangaroa Vāgana and Te Upoko o Te Ika. And thank you to our sponsors, Te Taura Whiri Te Reo Māori, Recorded Music NZ, and Creative New Zealand Toi Aotearoa. And thank you for listening. For more information about this podcast and the music of Aotearoa, go to the SOUNZ website, sounz.org.nz. That's SOUNZ. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Toi te ara puoru, SOUNZ.